Okay, so I gave the book 4 stars, and the general premise is that there is a very wealthy 16-year-old, follows 2 timelines, and she is friends with her neighbors, and they have 2 boys, one who's her age and one who's 3 years older. And she likes the older one and sort of ends up dating the younger one because she kind of gets pressured into it. But basically it's the romance between her and the older brother. The older brother is kind of part of this high school vengeance sort of club. They go out every Halloween night and they kind of do criminal activities that are sort of based on doing good and acting with, like, getting retribution for wrongs that have been done in the community. And it's this very wealthy community. So that's kind of their thing. There's a group of 4 guys, and they're, best friends forever, and they wear these masks. It's supposed to be creepy. And then something happens, and they end up in jail, except for the main love. So the female is Rika, and then the male is Michael. So except for Michael, he doesn't end up in jail because he's the older brother of a wealthy family, but everybody else goes to jail, and they think that Rika was the one that turned them in. And so the 3 years go by, and the guys are in jail for 3 years, and then they get out, they get back together, and they like plan this like vengeance against Rika sort of thing. And it's kind of like, I don't know, like a tormented, forbidden romance type of book. I don't know. And okay, so now I'm gonna go into spoilers and like an ethical discussion of the video or of the book. So I think, okay, so my thoughts about this are that there's a lot of discussion about sexual consent in this book, and I really, really admire that. They talk about statutory rape. They talk about age of consent. They talk about, continually getting consent. And I think that really is great, except for in one instance. In one instance, I think the author is trying to show that there's consent, but it's not. There's no consent. So that's kind of what ruined the book for me. And there wasn't a lot of character development. I mean, it was really just a plot-driven romance, which I think is fine. That's the genre that it is, and they did a good job with that. But, so they talk about, so when they're in high school, one of the guys is 19, and he sleeps with a 16-year-old. So, in my state, the age of consent is 16, and on top of that, we have Romeo and Juliet laws for 14 and 15-year-olds that I think give you that any 14 and 15-year-old can sleep with somebody up to 4 years older than them. So we have Romeo and Juliet laws, and our age of consent is 16. But apparently in this imaginary state, it's a strict 18. Actually, apparently that's the way it is in Illinois, which I didn't know that. So that's interesting. Maybe they're in Illinois, I don't know. So one guy has sex with a 16-year-old girl, and then the other, Michael and Rika, they don't have sex when she's 16 because that would be statutory rape in their state. And when she's 16, they also kind of Michael takes her to kind of like an eyes wide shut kind of orgy, but it's really just one couple, like having intercourse in front of an audience, and it's, whatever. And so, but they go through kind of a nice analysis of, well, like she's enjoying her body, and, should she really be inhibited from doing what she wants? This is completely consensual. And versus but what about the stigma that she's going to get? Or what if somebody's filming it? Or these kinds of things that would follow her around. So I thought that was a really progressive discussion that they were having as teenagers. And that was good. So then, like, the whole thing is kind of like a cat and mouse kind of game that they're playing with each other. So there's a couple other instances like that, but generally consent is, even in tricky situations, there's a threesome situation, and consent is very clearly given by all three parties. Everybody's on the same page. So for the most part, there is just a lot of consent. However, kind of at the climax of the book, there's a scene where Michael, who is the head of the gang, decides that, I guess this was part of the plan all along, but Rika gets there to this house, to Michael's house, and like all the guys are there and they're in their masks, and they basically have stolen all of her money, have burnt her house down, and have told her that they have taken her mother hostage, and that in order to get any money back or to have her mother back, that she would have to become a sex slave for the gang of guys, the 4 guys. And she was like, no, that's terrifying. And she like runs away. So, and then Michael is like, oh, you guys, we were only going to do it if she consented to being raped and going into sex slavery. Like, he tries to like make it consensual. And, that's not consent. You can't blackmail somebody into consent, by threatening their mother's life or their livelihood. Like, you can't do that. That's not consent. So then it was problematic after that because she gets back together with him and she sleeps with him that night, and it's like, no, like, you need to go away. And like, there's some like thing like where it's like, oh, she can't escape because there's a cliff. And she's like, no, they're in the suburbs. Like, she can leave. And so she, whatever. She doesn't even try to leave. She doesn't try to call the cops. They just resolve it themselves and they forgive him. So after that, that was kind of ruined for me. But it was still very enjoyable, and I give it 4 stars. It can't be 5 because just because of, you know, she did a really good job with consent for most of the book, but then kind of screwed up with the one scene. So those are my thoughts about Corrupt by Penelope Douglas, and I will talk to you later. Bye.